Y'all see all these young people we had? Can we get them a hand? Yeah. She trying to come on the stage, mama. Yeah. Yeah, y'all come on. Y'all come and screwed up. I need to make sure all eyes on me. Put your cell phones down unless you're using them to take notes. When I use the phrase at-risk youth, sometimes people push against that, and I understand why. But if you are growing up in 2022, if you've been born in the last 20 years, you are being brought into a detrimental environment, more so than maybe ever. Our youth, all of our youth, I don't care if you're from Barton Village or Buckhead, Atlanta or Afghanistan, youth are at risk. All of them. Social media puts them at risk. A cell phone that gives them access to the world puts them at risk. Depression, suicide, the amount of young men that are in prison. The last time I looked at the statistic, there were more young men in prison than in college. That is a pandemic. They are at risk. And when I think about this and try to figure out, God, what part am I to play in helping these at-risk youth? I think about the father in Mark 9 whose son was sick. He was at risk. The father was frustrated because his son was struggling with demonic activity. And sometimes we read that and say, oh, I don't believe in demons. I don't believe in. Let me tell you, it's real. And the demonic activity manifests itself differently today than it did back then. But all our children wrestle with something that they have a problem getting out of on their own. And this father brought this young man to Jesus. And because the church is Christ's body, I believe the church should have the answer. If this frustrated father brought his son who was struggling to Jesus, shouldn't the church be a place that we bring our at-risk youth? Shouldn't the church be a place of healing? Shouldn't the church be a place of hope? That's why we have to, as their leaders, provide an environment that they're attracted to. We have to make sure that we are building a ministry that ministers to youth, because God is holding us accountable for what's happening in their lives. We should not have youth in our ministry who don't make it, who aren't successful. But unfortunately, children are dying, and they're doing it in the church. There's a story that I think will intrigue you about a youth that died in the middle of a church service. Well, yeah, you may not have known this, but there's a story about a young man. His name is Eutychus, but you can put your name there because this could have been you. And this young man is actually in church, and he dies in the middle of the church service. On the first day of the week, we gathered with the local believers to share in the Lord's Supper. Paul was preaching to them, and since he was leaving the next day, he kept talking until midnight. The upstairs room where we met was lighted with many flickering lamps. As Paul spoke on and on, a young man named Eutychus, everybody say Eutychus, sitting on the what? Became what? Come on. Eutychus was in a dangerous position. Eutychus was sitting on a windowsill. You may say, Yannik, why is that a dangerous position? Well, they were in a 3-story building. And back in the days of antiquity, the buildings didn't have windows how your house has a window to separate the indoors from the outdoors. So Eutychus is sitting on the windowsill of a 3-story building during a church service. And he fell asleep. It's easy to fall asleep in church when you're on a windowsill. The windowsill, watch this, Avion, is the place where you have one foot in the world and one foot in the word. The windowsill, all eyes on me. The windowsill he was sitting on put him in the world. He was outside. And he was in the word. He was in the church service. He was in the world and in the word at the same time. I want to pause right here parenthetically and ask you, where are you sitting? Because if you're on the windowsill, you won't be engaged with worship. It's hard to care about what Yannik is saying if I'm scrolling through Instagram at the same time. That's what it means to be on a windowsill, because you're in church and out of church at the same time. It's a dangerous position to be in the world. And when I say world, I'm not talking about the planet Earth. The world is a system. When you hear somebody say the world system, what it means is to operate in a way that is opposite of God. So Eutychus is in the world. He's on the windowsill. He's outside, but he's in church. Maybe he's struggling with what's going on in his life, and he's really not sure how committed he should be. Maybe he's frustrated and aggravated with some things, and maybe he's struggling with his faith a little bit. We don't really know why Eutychus may not have been fully connected with what was going on during the worship service, but what we do know is that he was on the windowsill, and so are some of us. I'm not here to beat you up. I'm here to build you up. But the truth will set you free. Where are you sitting? I'm not asking you, where do your parents think you're sitting? asking you, where are you really sitting? I'm asking you, what are the struggles that nobody knows that you have? I'm asking you, what are the temptations that nobody knows that you have because you don't talk about it? I'm asking you, what are you really dealing with in your life? Because I love you too much to let you sit on my windowsill. Eutychus is in a dangerous position. And usually, BJ, dangerous positions lead to deadly plunges. Because the text says that he's on the windowsill and he fell sound asleep. Eutychus is knocked out, y'all. Eutychus is gone. He's drool on his pillow. He's knocked out. He's sound asleep. And what does it say? It dropped where? To where? He drops 3 stories to his death. Dangerous positions lead to deadly plunges. Sometimes sitting on the windowsill won't work. Sometimes dangerous positions actually lead to deadly plunges. We can't think that we can sit on a windowsill for so long and not suffer a consequence. We can't think that we can have sex with whoever we want and the STD never comes. We can't think that we can sit on the windowsill of the drug life and addiction and not think that harm to our body won't come. We can't think that we can scroll through social media and be on Instagram 3 hours a day and TikTok 4 hours a day and not think depression won't come. Sometimes when you're in a dangerous position for too long, the deadly plunge comes. That's why I want to encourage you. Don't get on the windowsill. Don't listen to your friends that tell you the windowsill is fun. You'll love the windowsill. You ought to try the windowsill. Because here's the thing. Your friends won't be there to catch your fall. The same friend that was enticing you to get in that promiscuous relationship with that young woman won't be there to help you raise your son. When you have a son, that guess where they gonna be? At the club? Oh, you can't go no more? You talked me into this, you can at least help me watch it. Your friend's not gonna catch your fall. Don't be tempted to sit on the windowsill. And here's the thing about the devil. He's real, and the devil will make the windowsill look real good. The devil will make the windowsill look really attractive. See, the devil will show you what's good and hide what's bad. The devil will try to attract you to sit on that windowsill, but he won't tell you about the deadly plunge. I told you all a few weeks ago that the devil gives you the pleasure up front and the pain on the back end. God will give you pain up front, pleasure on the back end. Yeah, the devil will give you short-term pleasure and long-term pain. God gives you short-term pain, but long-term pleasure. Be careful when you get pleasure too soon. Be careful when it's all fun and games. Be careful when there's no sacrifice, because when you're on the windowsill, you're going to get comfortable. And when you get too comfortable, you fall asleep. And when you fall asleep, you die. Keep it real. All eyes on me. Y'all know if you keep your eyes on me, I won't know that it's you. When you did it the first time, weren't you convicted? Didn't you feel bad? The second time, you felt bad, but not as bad as the first time. And then the third time, you didn't hardly even think about it. And then the fourth time, you were getting other people to do it. See, sin desensitizes you. and you get comfortable in that dangerous position. See, he was probably uncomfortable on the windowsill at first, but then he sat there so long that an uncomfortable position became comfortable. And then because he was so comfortable, he fell asleep. And then when he fell asleep, he fell. See, when you get comfortable, you start slipping. You stop going to church. You stop praying. You stop reading your word. And before you know it, the dangerous position leads to a deadly plunge. The stuff you used to be ashamed of, now you bragging about. You're falling asleep in a dangerous position. I never met somebody in prison who said, I plan to be here. No, never. As many times as I've visited people in prison, not one time that I meet somebody and they say, man, I couldn't wait to get here. I never met a young man that wanted the STD. I never met a young woman that said, I'm trying to get addicted to the drugs. Well, how do we end up in deadly positions that we never desired to place ourselves? Because we fell asleep. But my biggest problem with this story isn't what happened, it's where it happened. I'm not going to say I'd be okay with it because it hurts anytime a young person hurts or is struggling. But it hurts a little bit more when it's in the church. So, yeah, I was frustrated that he failed, but I was more frustrated where he failed. Because he took the deadly plunge in ministry. He took the deadly plunge, all eyes on me, Charles. He took the deadly plunge. And we can't put it all on Eutychus because he's just a young man. At least he was in church. Even if he was asleep, at least he went. Even though he was on the windowsill, at least he was in the right place. I don't blame the deadly position as much as I blame the disengaged people. Because Sleepy, I know how you roll. If you see young people sitting on the windowsill, you ain't cool with it. I'm trying to get in a counseling session. I'm trying to talk to your mama, your daddy, your grandma, whoever your guardians are. I'm trying to see what the deal is. If I see a young person in a dangerous position, how can I let them sit there? He failed not just because of his dangerous position. He failed because of a disengaged people. Y'all know I love to stick to the text. Mama Hatcher, let me see it again. I want y'all to know why I say they were disengaged. Take me to verse 8. The upstairs room where we met was lighted with many flickering lamps. See, they teach you in school that when you study scripture, that you got to read slow because everything is there for a purpose. So I had to ask myself, why such detail about the environment? Why I need to know that there were in the room? Maybe because that lets us know that there were folk who saw Eutychus in his dangerous position. And they didn't say anything. They didn't wake him up when they saw him nodding. They didn't pull him off the windowsill to say, you're in a dangerous position. That chosen generation, the lab, listen to me. Stop getting an attitude when folks try to pull you off the windowsill. Don't get mad when your parents are telling you this is dangerous, you could die. Don't get an attitude when sleepy's all up in your business, or somebody's asking you a question about your behavior or where you've been or who you're texting or who you're friends with. Why? Because you need to be happy somebody cares, because there's millions of kids sitting on windowsills and they don't have a parent, they don't have a ministry, they don't have a church. So stop getting an attitude when folk want to pull you off the windowsill. I'm trying to save your life. I had a child out of wedlock that I don't want you to have. I got kicked out of school. I don't want you to get kicked out. I struggled in my career because of a felony, and I want you to make 6 figures when you're 25, not when you're 40. Is there anybody who's with me? I want my kids to go further than I went. I want to make more money than I made. I want to have a better family than I had. You need to be glad when somebody try to pull your behind off the windowsill. It's amazing to me how you could live so little and think you know so much. How you have all the answers and you 13. I've been here 3 times as long as you, and you gonna tell me I'm wrong? Pride comes before the fall. Somebody's trying to keep you from falling. Somebody's trying to keep you from an abusive relationship. Somebody's trying to keep you from deadly diseases. Somebody's trying to keep you from a nasty addiction. Somebody's trying to keep you from a felony that you'll never get off your record. Somebody's trying to keep you from the deadly plunge. Because folk always worry when it's too late. Watch this, verse 9. It says, as Paul spoke on and on, a young man named Eutychus sitting on the windowsill became what? Very drowsy. Finally, he fell sound asleep and dropped 3 stories to his death. Verse 10, Paul went down, bent over him, and took him into his arms and said, don't worry. Why are you worrying now after he fell? Why can we get so many people to support somebody that's dead and they wouldn't support him when they was alive? Isn't it amazing how you can fill a church for a young person's funeral, but if you put a text out to get some mentors, you gotta beg? Why is it so easy for us to show up when it's too late? No, who's willing to make the sacrifice when they're living? Who's willing to give when they're alive? Who's willing to miss a basketball game or a Sunday football game to go spend some time with a young man who doesn't have a father? I'm sick and tired of filling buildings when a casket is in there when we could have prevented the casket. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound to cure. I'm going to miss the football game. Somebody's on the windowsill. That was my extra shopping money. Somebody's about to take a deadly plunge. Well, this is my time. No, it's not. It's God's time. You were bought with a price. We worry when it's too late. This was a while ago, but I don't know if you all remember the young man, Demaje Bell, who was killed. And when I was on the news and the reporter was asking me, and I was frustrated, I probably shouldn't have said this, but she caught me at a bad time. And she said, what do you think the problem is? I said, the problem is every person that could have helped Demaje and didn't should be prosecuted for murder. Every church that didn't, that wasn't trying to help should be on the stand. Every man that saw Demaje who never tried to help should be on the stand. Every person who didn't help that young man should be on the stand. Young men and women are losing their life, and we watching Netflix. This engaged people.
But they will say, oh, I'll pray for you.
The facts. She said, and they'll say, I'll pray for you. I love James. James says, if you could help somebody, go ahead and help them. Don't tell them you're going to come back tomorrow. Sometimes they don't need a prayer. They need you to be disciplined and do something. Sometimes you are the answer to the prayer. Why are you praying that somebody go do something when you was right there? Disengaged people. But here's the good news. I didn't bring you here to the depression. Here's the good news. That even if you're in a deadly position, and even if you take a deadly plunge, and even if you've been around disengaged people, you still have access to God's dynamic power. I love verse 10. Yeah. I thought y'all get more excited about that. Paul went down, bent over him, took him into his arms, said, don't worry. Oh man, y'all tripping today. Don't worry, he said. Hold on, I thought he died. I thought Paul said,
don't worry. He's alive. Not on my watch.
Paul said, even if you fall, it ain't too late. Even if you made a few mistakes, even if you are on the windowsill, there's some divine power that can bring you back to life. Is there anybody here besides myself that has been touched by his divine power? Yeah, I fell into pornography and God's divine power got me out. Yeah, I fell into depression and God's divine power got me out. Yeah, I fell into an addiction and God's divine power got me out. That's what that baptism was about. In other words, he was saying I was dead and God's divine power got me out, and the same power that rose Christ from the grave is alive in me. I don't have to be dead when I've got access to divine power. I don't have to have a dead marriage when I've got access to divine power. I don't have to have a depressed mindset when I've got access to a divine power. Yeah, you may fall, but it's not the fact that you fail. The fact of the matter is you still got access to the power. Eutychus' name means fortunate.
Say that again. Say it again.
Yeah, I researched it.
Yes, sir. That's what you do.
Eutychus means fortunate. I had to ask myself, how could his name mean fortunate and he failed? Devron, it messed me up. God, how could Eutychus be fortunate and he failed? I believe God said back to me in my spirit, it's because he failed that he's fortunate. Because when you fall and you meet God, your life transforms forever. That's why I love a church full of fallen people. That's why I love a church with people with testimonies. Why? Because I can tell you how I failed and God got me up. I can tell you how I fell into that depression, but now I got the peace that passes all understanding. I can tell you how my mind was messed up, but now I have a joy that doesn't make sense. I can tell you how I was broke, but God picked me up. It's because I fail that I'm fortunate. It's because God will allow pain to lead me to my purpose. God will allow those things that hurt me to help me. Yeah, Eutychus failed. Yeah, you may be dealing with some stuff in your school, but that doesn't mean you're not fortunate. Yeah, you may have some emotional things going on, but that doesn't mean you're not fortunate. God's divine power is waiting on you, and if you allow God to touch your life, he'll take that fall and make you fortunate. Here's why I love Chosen. I'm done. Lamar, you can play. Where's Lamar? You can play the little spiritual music. I'm done. I'm finished. Listen, Young people, old people. If you're on a windowsill, you got a second chance. God's divine power is waiting on you. God wants you to be fortunate. Thank you. God wants your life to be transformed. Don't be so intoxicated with the world that you miss the power of his word. Because God can transform you. God can take that lust out of your heart. God can take that temptation out of your mind. God can do exceedingly abundantly above all that you could ask or think. You don't have to be the follower. You can be the leader. You don't have to be the borrower. You can be the lender. You can be the light of the world. I love Matthew 5:14. It says, you are the light of the world, a city on a hill that can't be hidden. And nobody takes a lamp and puts it under a bowl. Rather, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everybody in the house. Too many of our young people have a light that's shining, but they want to cover it up because they don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. Your job is to make people feel uncomfortable. Your job is to shine so bright that people want to wear shades. It is your job to convict people and make them want to change. You are to be the influence, not the influence. Because you have divine power. Don't let anybody tell you different. You're special. God can use you to transform your community, to transform your home, to transform your family. Don't let anybody look down on you because you're young.
That's real. Come on, Tim.
Or because you failed.
I like her. Oh, because you failed. You're going to preach next week. This young lady right here, I like her. God can transform